The Betterment Junkies.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I am Mr. White.
And I'm Mr. Black.
And we are the Betterment Junkies. Today we've set up to talk about something I especially have grown more interested in recent times, and that's about space. Space, the moon landing, but actually mainly about Neil Armstrong. I think a lot of people take for granted what these people do, and I want to put Neil Armstrong out there in the light. And that's mainly because I just saw a crazy movie, Mr. Black, and not a crazy movie. It was a historical movie, and it was a great movie. I think one for Oscar bait for sure, and it's called The First Man. First Man. It's completely about Neil Armstrong's story. You don't get another perspective. You don't get Buzz Aldrin's perspective. It's clearly what this man did, and I think it goes great lengths to show exactly what he went through and how he handled it, and how cool and smart and just calm, collected he was. And you could see why he was the commander of Apollo 11 to land on the moon. It's a great movie.
So, as far as my understanding of it, I'll turn your mic a little bit like this. Yeah, cool. So, as far as my understanding, if you asked me before you watch this movie and you asked me who was the first person on the moon, I would be like, Neil Armstrong, maybe?
Kind of guessing, right?
Yeah, I'd be like kind of guessing.
Neil or Lance Armstrong? Yeah.
Yeah, no. All right, hopefully I'm not that off base. But I mean, I'm really into all this space stuff, futuristic stuff. But for some reason, when it comes to space exploration in the past century, I don't really know a lot. I completely subscribe to the idea that we went to the moon. I'm not saying that.
I do believe, after researching more, watching the movie, and knowing more about his life and everything they actually did, I concede to the fact that I do believe we landed on the moon. I absolutely do believe
I always took that for granted. But I don't know the details. And I know it's at a trying time in our history.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, let me backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about the movie first.
Okay.
I'm going to give an official spoiler warning, but it is history.
It's that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. But anyways, beautifully shot. The movie was directed really well, told his life.
Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong. And to know more about the man, he escaped death 5 times during all these practice and tests that he would do. He was fascinated with aviation since he was little. But I guess it starts from a point, and it's one of the most trying times of his life. He loses his 2-year-old daughter to brain cancer.
Oh, shit.
And I think a switch he wasn't a very talkative person to begin with, but after that, a lot of his family members and everyone agrees that it took a toll on him, but he didn't talk to anybody.
Wait, is he still alive?
He just passed away recently.
Oh, shit.
A couple years ago.
Okay.
I think Buzz Aldrin is still alive because he had something to say about the movie. I don't know. He was a typical 60s, 70s, 50s man where he's your father. You don't talk to him. He doesn't say I love you. He was a typical, he just did his job, and he was really good at his job. That's one thing I've learned to appreciate. The smartness let me tell you about some of his failures. So after he fought in the Korean War as a pilot.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. What is that? Air Force. As Air Force.
Yeah.
Yes. Just when he was about 20 to 22. So he did this about 2 years, and he was just recommended as one of the greatest flyers to do it. So he eventually got married, got a family, yada yada yada, and to work he got to be selected as one of the pilots to try these new space type of rockets that they were trying to build, and new airplanes. And at the time, the fastest one was called X-15. That was the fastest jet that they built at the time.
Okay.
And he was one of the ones to test them. I think there was about 11 of them. And I think in an interview, one of his brothers said that, if you were chosen, you were the elite of the other flyers. The other flyers were basically peasants towards you, because you literally got to fly this, it took a lot to fly it. It was the fastest thing at the time.
So now, the difficulty in order to ride it, is it intelligence or is it physical capability? I'm assuming it's both.
Both.
Yeah,
mainly intelligence, because you have to be an engineer, aeronautics engineer, basically.
Yeah, I feel a lot of people don't even recognize it. If you're a pilot, you're just this cool guy who just can fly really well, but there's a lot of intelligence
you
behind
need to
it.
know physics, you need to know engineering, like,
Yeah.
you need to know aeronautics. Like, there's a lot of things you need to know. So you can just tell by this man went to the moon. Not only
Yeah.
did he fly a plane, but he went to the moon, and we just wait till we get to the moon landing. Like,
Okay.
it did not go smooth at
Yeah.
all. And that was Apollo 11. So clearly we had some fuck ups to get to the moon, you know? So let me go back to X-15.
Yeah.
He was one of the ones test piloting it, and something happened where he just took it too far. And the way planes fly, the reason the planes don't go above a certain atmosphere is because they take wind into the consideration of how it flies. And once you get out of the certain atmosphere, the air becomes very thin. There's no air for you to maneuver. There's no aerodynamics for you to do.
Oh,
So
okay.
he went a little too far.
Yeah.
And he was basically started floating in space. Like in the movie, they show like his pen actually like floated up and he grabbed it.
Mm.
And he lost all control of the X-15. Literally just floating out further and further in space. And this man, when I tell you he is calm in danger, not a fear in his eye, just even when they talk about it in his interviews and his autobiographies, he literally just says, I just had to wait. I just had to wait for the air to come back so that I think it might have been less than 15 minutes, but as soon as he got some control of it, just took it back into the atmosphere and landed it. Just landed it and went back to work. Like,
that's
that
good.
man,
So what? He waited for air to come back?
yeah, so because planes, the things we send in space are made specifically and they're shot by rockets specifically for a reason, because planes fly through air. And they need the air to fly.
Yeah.
The engines that planes take, they take in the air and the oxygen, and they have to shoot it out and basically build combustion, something like that.
Okay.
I'm not a scientist, but you need the air.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, so when he went too far high up, you're losing air. It's a thin atmosphere, and by the time you're in space, there's no air whatsoever. So he's lost all control of his space flight. He's just floating up in the air. Now, that's just his first challenge. That's before he even gets chosen to be an astronaut, all right?
Yeah.
So the man had to be interviewed, and everyone around him, like, revered him as just so calm and smart. Now, he had flaws. Like, he wasn't the best husband. He did end up getting a divorce later in his life. He wasn't obviously the best father when he went to the moon.
I think this is a common trait among great men.
Yeah, yeah. But like I can see that. I do still revere and respect the man. There's a scene in the movie where he has to go to the moon, and his wife wants him to sit his kids down and to explain, like, you may not come back. And it's just such a subtle conversation. He's like, the mission, we plan on succeeding, but there's a possibility that we might not come back. Everything has to go right for the mission to succeed. And his kids are just like, are you going to come back? Or like, but he has no fear. But the thing is, like, as a man getting chosen by, now, this was Apollo 11, like we said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Apollo 1, he goes into the astronaut program with and he obviously builds a camaraderie and friendship with the people he's around. And it shows that in the movie. Buzz Aldrin is also around that type of group. And 3 of his friends get selected for Apollo 1 as they get fitted into these rockets. Now, mind you, the movie does a great job to show you how claustrophobic these rockets, these people sit in. Like, it rattles, it shakes. You have no control until you get into the space atmosphere. So that however long you're flying from the ground to up, that's a scary thing. These guys didn't even get off their ground, and there was a leak in a pipe. So oxygen leaked, and it caused a spark. And as they were fitted in their rockets, like already closed tight, ready to launch, a fire just blew in the rocket and burned them down in like 10 seconds.
That's fucking crazy. At that point, and if I survived that, I'd be like, fuck this.
First of all, there's no surviving that. They're enclosed in capsules, and it's like 400-degree like sun type fire just bursts. If you see it in the movie, again, spoiler, the rockets that they set you up with, you have because you're going upwards, you're basically seated in like a 90-degree angle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So the fire, like, it's the door is like above their head, and it's already locked. And you could see them in the movie, like, he's trying to act as fast as he could, but the fire and the oxygen just reacts too much.
Yeah.
So you had failures like these. You had the American people saying, is this really worth it? Is it doing? And just the conviction of this man to be like, we're going to get it down right. We're going to get it right down here on Earth so we don't fuck up in space. It's just his determination just led through the entire movie. And the actor is Ryan Gosling, and he does a fucking amazing job portraying.
What the fuck? Ryan Gosling is in the movie?
Yeah, he's the lead. He plays Neil Armstrong. which is surprising. But him and he did La La Land with his director.
Oh shit! No, so I've seen this movie. I didn't know that was on or based on. I just saw Ryan Gosling. I was like, all right, this is like a new space movie.
No, it's
Oh,
he's
that's
playing
the
Neil
movie you're talking
Armstrong.
about.
Yeah, he legit
Oh.
plays Neil Armstrong.
Oh,
It's
shit.
almost like an autobiography, but it
But
shows.
it's pretty like realistic.
It absolutely, because it shows like the pressure he had, and he's not one for fame. Like he was a man that knew what he was about, his job.
So would you say like Neil Armstrong was integral to us going to the moon?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just because he had such a quick decision, like he had such.
Wait, so he was a leader.
He was a commander.
He was a commander,
in Apollo
okay.
11. He was chosen as a commander.
Okay.
3 people went up to land on the moon. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, those 2 actually went down on the moon, and Mike Collins, he surfaced the moon while they went down.
That fucking sucks.
Yeah, you're like
If
right
Mike
there.
I've never heard of Mike Collins.
Yeah, because he didn't go down.
Dude,
Yeah.
that sucks. That's like, why go up to the moon when you're not gonna get on
But
the
the
moon?
fact that these people, like, it was bigger than them. It didn't matter. It was the fact that, look, we're getting a man here. Be it that be Neil Armstrong because he's the best suited to go down there. But it was just like this understanding they had that this was bigger than them.
Yeah.
To go into space, I don't like you said, you take space travel for granted. Like, oh, we just went to the moon. We traveled in space. Our phones work on GPS satellites. We have stuff orbiting the Earth so we can do our direct TV, our YouTubes, you can listen to this podcast, like things like that. And we take for granted how these things got launched into space, the science that it takes for them to rotate, the science that it takes for them to slingshot around the Earth, go to the moon, orbit, then slingshot back. Like the way it's just crazy. Obviously, I'm not a scientist, but like to be able to understand that, now I can see where like the craziness of science comes, the fascination of science comes, especially when you put into something space travel. That's just crazy. Now, why was Neil Armstrong the best suited person for this? So there was the main reason is because I think he's smart. He outlasts everyone, and he makes decisions quickly and calmly. Meaning by the X-15 story I told you, he had to get back on Earth's atmosphere. So you know how the moon landing rover is like shaped a little differently? They have to have what the actual spacecraft that they land on the moon is shaped differently than a rocket.
No idea what you're talking about.
You never seen a moon rover? You ever played those games?
Does it look like the Mars rover?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Well, no,
Okay.
no, not the little robot that like
Wait,
rolls
is
around.
the thing in the movies where it's on the moon?
Yeah.
In Futurama, where there's the moon thing, they visit it.
And it's like almost like a tripod,
Yeah.
and it's like
Kinda.
hexagonic.
Yeah,
And it
okay.
almost looks like there's foil around. All right, forget
Sure,
the
let's
foil
go.
part.
All right, so I know what you're talking about.
So they had to practice. You ever play those games where you had to land on a certain station, but you had to keep bursting in left, right, up,
Oh,
down.
yeah.
So that's how those games derive from them trying to land on the moon.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what they had to do. They obviously had to take in the effect of gravity and how much fuel and everything that they had. So they had to practice on Earth first. When I say this man escapes death, like he escapes death, his rover tilted, lost like some sort of angle, and he literally had 1 second to decide, and he just ejected out of his seat, and the thing crashed within like a second and a half of him ejecting out of his seat.
Now, is this like in the movie or is this like actually
Both?
Okay.
Once you if you watch a documentary about his life and then you watch the movie, you actually see how much they took into consideration and what they put into the movie.
That's kind of cool.
They did a really good job of showing his life and who the man is. I think they did really good because you have to understand he's so close to it. So these failures, he got out of it, but his friends didn't get out of Apollo 1. They died. So he had to attend these funerals. I told you in the beginning he lost his 2-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
That's from brain cancer. It changed him as a man. So this man is going to like 1 funeral a year, basically. You could put it on the average. Like that's a lot. That's a big mental toll. Like we just think like, these people died of space program. Whoa, we're so sorry. Prayers are with them. But this man's good friends, family friends. He has lunch with them, dinner with them. They try to consolidate him when they know that he's off. It's crazy. Like with this toll, he was still chosen as the commander of Apollo 11 to go land the first man on the moon. Now,
see, I didn't know that he was a commander.
He was a commander.
So I assumed Neil Armstrong was someone to be respected, but like now I feel like he's more of someone like that needs to be looked into.
Absolutely.
As far as
I think all three of them should, because they did all make the journey. I mean, I do maybe fall back on Mike Collins a little bit.
my God, oh God.
We're sorry, Mike
Can
Collins. You were there. You were there.
Can you imagine that conversation? Okay, Armstrong definitely is going to go on the moon. Buzz Aldrin and Mike Collins, they probably had some like passive aggressive debate, like on who's gonna
Possibly.
Like Buzz Aldrin's like, you would probably be good at navigating the ship.
There is a cool story about Buzz Aldrin before I get into another thing that Neil Armstrong fixed. So when they were on the moon, when they successfully landed on the moon, which was a crazy thing itself, they were having trouble getting back up to the shuttle that Mike Collins was in orbiting the moon. And I saw it in an interview from the movie, and this is how much facts that they looked into it. Buzz Aldrin, now, he's also an astronaut, all right? Just because he's not Neil Armstrong, these people are still astronauts, these people are still smart.
They're physically and mentally
capable of doing this. That's why they were chosen. So
and brave as fuck.
Oh my God.
Okay, keep going.
Man. Once you see the movie, you get a kind of feeling of how claustrophobic it is, and just to be in there. But anyways, so they weren't able to actually lift off right away to get back in orbit of the moon. And there's this a story where Buzz Aldrin actually like hollowed out a pen and stuck it in the actual module and fixed the wiring of it somehow, and then they were able to lift off again.
Damn.
From a pen.
And this is real.
This is real. I look it up. You can fact check me, but I'm 99% sure this is real. That he had to do something with a pen to get them back up into orbit on the moon, to get back home, to get back in the station. It's just ridiculous. So when I say get back in orbit of the moon, so there's this rocket going in orbit, so that not only do they have to time it right, they have to angle it, they have to get in orbit with the other rocket, and then they have to reattach the rocket back to this moon landing.
Like a low-key interstellar docking scene.
Exactly.
Okay.
If anybody's seen the movie, like the docking scene of Interstellar,
yeah.
Like that's crazy to do in space. Like you think these people who drive buses are so good at making left turns and right turns? You're fucking doing it in space.
That's
it's crazy. And so before, like, obviously that was the rudimentary of how to attach and detach a spacecraft to go down and up. So they had to basically practice that and get that right. So Neil Armstrong was chosen to do the practice. They called him Gemini. They spelled it Gemini, but they called it Gemini. I'm not sure why. Gemini project. And basically they shot a space shuttle up. Neil Armstrong went with, man, I forget his name. His name is like Dave Scott or something. A very white name. I can't remember. Dave, I think it's white. Dave. But in the interview, like, man, this man basically gives his life to Neil Armstrong because they went up there. So they fired this rocket, unmanned rocket first, before they fired Neil and let's just call him Dave. And the rocket was first orbiting. Then Neil and Dave successfully made it into space. And all this time, it's also being recorded, radio stations, things like that. Their families had things called squawk boxes, which was like a main line to Houston Command. Yeah. So they can basically hear how Neil talks to the command, command talks to Neil. So everything was going good. Their families were listening in. The both crafts got into space. They attached perfectly fine. And credit to this man, Dave, that we don't know. We
really should find out.
I know, we should. But credit to this man, like, they're just chilling in space, like, attached. They go on the dark side of the Earth, so they lose communication. But as they're losing communication, credit to this man. This man goes, "Hey, Neil, I think we're banking." So his elevation thing that shows him that they're on, like, a neutral line of level, because you can't really tell in space. There's, like, 360 degrees you can move around.
Yeah.
So he basically tells him, "Hey, Neil, we're banking. We're rotating. That's not good. Once you start rotating in space, there's no, like, you have to thrust it. You have to stop it." You ever seen the movie Gravity?
Yeah.
You know how she's, like, rotating like crazy? Yeah, there's no, like, basis of ground.
Yeah.
So they think it's the thing that they're attached to, which I believe was called the Argus. It started with a J or something like that. A J's? Whatever. We'll look it up. They thought it was that, so they detached from it and realized that it was not that. Now, you know from movies that astronauts get training, like, underwater, and the thing where they rotate very fast, so when they hit with G-force, they don't pass out right away.
Yeah.
So they started spinning, I believe what they said was 1 revolution per second, which is crazy fast. So they had about 40 seconds till they were about to pass out. In the movie, they show Dave passing out first, all right?
Yeah.
And they do show scenes of Neil Armstrong being in that testing of the G-force, and he literally, like, passes out, and he wakes up, and they're telling him to get off, and he's like, no, let's go again. So that's the type of man he was.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so he didn't pass out, but in that moment of G-force, like, you're losing every thought. And mind you, if they pass out, it's all done. Like,
yeah, there it's done.
They're done.
Space, yeah.
They're just blacked out in space. Like, what can they do?
Mm-hmm.
You take like another 6 months to send another probe up or something? No, they're dead. They black out, they're dead. So this man just, while they're spinning, they get back in communication with ground control. They tell them we have a big problem, yada, yada, yada. They're not able to fix it. They detach. They start spinning so much crazier. And before he passes out, Dave in the interview says he knew every switch to press. He knew every word, what to look for, what to find, what switches to press, what thrusters to do, and push forward. It's just, the man was so calm. He saved both of their lives. And then he landed. They both landed that spacecraft in like the waters of China or something like that. And the man drove home and had a coffee with his wife and was just talking about it. Like, it's just like, he drove home.
Yeah.
Like, what other people would like come near death and be like, okay, I'm going to drive home now. They would be shaking.
Yeah.
And like, that's just crazy. And the last thing I'll tell you about Neil Armstrong before we move on, about the actual moon landing.
Okay.
So I told you he had the failed rover on Earth. He executed that. So as they go, they start realizing that their main computer is overloading. And they didn't really know what that meant, but their basically tracking system was taking them into unlandable ground on the moon. There was too many boulders, too many rocks. Okay. If they tried to land, the spacecraft was not going to land properly. So he took it upon himself to go manual, not let the computer do it, to go manual.
Mm-hmm.
And because he did that, they ran out of fuel by the time they landed. But because of him, they were able to land on a closed surface where they got those photos, shoots, and everything like that you see of them planting the flag and things like that. So Neil is the one who found that spot. Okay, it wasn't Houston. It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't like their plan was to land them in a ditch where they would never survive from, because that's what their mathematics and scientists and everything told the overload computer to do. And he took it upon himself to be like, nah, bitch, I got this. Like, come on. The man is a legend. This is obviously conceding to the fact that we went in space. You know, we went to the moon. But I strongly believe that. Like, these lives, this money that cost, it was crazy. And for people who are doubters, like, if you want to get inspired about space or why we should go into space, obviously listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson. But listen to JFK's speech in 1961.
Actually, we're gonna play it real quick.
Just
in a second, we're gonna play it. But something also, I don't know if you like the show Adam Ruins Everything, but they have one on moon landing, and some people have criticized Adam Ruins Everything, but I feel like they did a good job of explaining the key points of why the moon landing was definitely true. So if someone wants to, have you seen that video?
I have not, actually.
Check it out.
Put it up.
We'll put it up as a link. I think it does a really good job of just kind of going over the basics of why it makes more sense that we went to the moon as opposed to like faking it.
Exactly.
Yeah. But we're going to transition into the next kind of subtopic, I think. Yeah. And that you had a question, and that question was
it worth it?
Was it worth it? Should we have been doing it? Is space exploration, because so much money goes into it, is it actually even worth it? And Mr. White is going to play a clip in just a second about... What speech is this?
No, this is... we went to the moon, put a man on the moon in 1969. JFK made a speech in 1961 that by the end of this decade, as he calls it, that we're going to send a man to the moon. He has a great speech. I think it's in Rice University. It's about an 18-minute long speech. We're just going to play like a 45-second, which is actually one of his famous segments of the speech as to why we choose the moon, why go there. If you do get time, it's a great speech. Just listen to it. If you ever feel doubt about space, like, he will turn you up.
All right, we're going to play it right now.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
So,
Dude,
now
that
you
was pretty
should.
epic.
He's a great speaker. You should listen to his entire speech if you do get the chance. But just that clip right there, just doesn't it make you seem like space is worth it?
Yeah, and he kind of set the tone for the entire decade of trying to get to the moon, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you actually listen to his entire speech, he talks about the funding of it. It's about like almost $5 billion a year.
Mhm.
But he compared it to cigarettes and tobacco, and apparently we spend more on cigarettes and tobacco a year,
Yeah.
which is even crazier. So to think like think how many scientists came about, the new technologies, all the mysteries that we're unraveling just from space exploration.
So the common argument that I fucking hate hearing is something like for NASA in present day, I guess similar back then, would be like, oh, all this money going to NASA and space exploration, all this bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
We should just spend it on social, I don't know, like
Education or
education.
something
Like
that.
it could be spent in so many better ways.
It makes sense.
The argument on face level seems compelling, but it's really, really stupid in the long term.
So, the Mega Millions went up to $1.6 billion. Someone bought a winning ticket in South Carolina. $1.6 billion. You can put that money in education, but you want to give it out as lottery.
Well, the difference there is like that's one person. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, but in a theory, like you can pull money out from all these different places. But
Yeah.
I think, well, so take it back to 1960s. There was a Cold War going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the race between communism and democracy, mainly America and Russia. So it's actually interesting, after World War II ended, America and Russia took like German scientists and Russian scientists and basically put them in these space programs to exceed basically any expectations.
Mm-hmm.
The crazy thing is JFK in America, as you can tell from the speech, they were serious about it. Russia was serious to the point where they can just get missiles to go long enough to America.
Yeah.
So that's why they, even though, which is crazy, Russia was the first country to get a satellite in space, which was Sputnik.
Mm-hmm.
They were the first person to get an astronaut in space and do a spacewalk, basically tethered to the space station and walk out in space.
Yeah.
So they were the first of a lot. I believe they might have even been the first to capture images of the moon. But there was a victory for America to get to the moon and plant the flag on the moon.
Yeah, I feel like it was like an entire race of democracy versus communism.
And the space race fell right into it. It fell right in. And I think that national movement is what led us, in 8 years, literally from when he made the speech, in 8 years, we got a man to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
He
He just thought of that shit. He just literally, he stood on the platform.
I knew you were going to fucking
He
say
just stood on the platform
like that.
and he literally thought for a second and he just said it. Like, the man's a fucking genius.
All right. Where was I going to go with this? Oh, no. The initial point, or I was actually kind of going with it, was how would you respond when someone says that we should spend money now, present day? It could be better used for other things, humanitarian cases, education. When someone tells me that, I don't know. What would you say to that?
Well, this Earth is gonna deflate. It might not be in our generation, might not be in second, third, whatever. In some generation, this Earth will not support us.
Mm-hmm.
You could just, even if we start cleaning everything up, we start doing things, implementing things like other countries do, like Singapore does a lot of great environmental laws that actually replenish their goods and their waste and everything. Even if we start implementing these things, there is something that's going to happen. You look back, an asteroid took out an entire species on Earth. All right, that's part of our history. We didn't pollute Earth, but we went into an ice age. These things are going to happen to this planet. Eventually, our sun will die out. If anything, even if we sustain that long, our sun will not. So we do have to look in further exploration. I mean, I think in 2016, NASA found the closest Earth-like planet was about 4.2 light years away. The fastest unmanned probe that we have, even if we send it out, it takes about 1,500 years to get there. That's the
Yeah.
fastest thing we have to travel. So we have to put funding. I think we have to put funding and we have to put resources into this because this is going to be our survival. At some point, this will be our survival.
So you have the long-term approach, which, I mean, it's cool. I don't think
It's cool. It's
I mean,
cool.
I don't think that's the reason.
I mean, it's
though.
not going to affect my lifetime, but it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to see the results of that, but I mean, it's cool.
But imagine if
But
we
no,
put,
what the
imagine
real
in our
reason-
lifetime if we put these resources, then we could see these results.
No, but I think the real reason is when a government or humanity in general chooses to face adversity, then essentially the smartest people will then solve those problems with which will then come up with new technologies.
Exactly. If you heard in the speech, he was like, "Why do we cross the Atlantic? Why do you climb the highest
Yeah,
mountain?
that's
These
exactly.
obstacles are there. As humans, if you listen to his entire speech, it was like we came out of caves. We built bigger structures to live better lives in. We learned how to build fire, roll carts, and build wheels. Then we learned science. We learned astronomy, gravity. Like, why? What's the reason? We could have just kept living the way we were living if we didn't have this natural curiosity and growth of intelligence.
Yeah.
And I think if you put this, yeah, it was unfortunate. It was a Cold War type of thing where it was just like out of fear more than anything else.
Yeah.
But if you put that type of national mentality into space, it will breed the smartest people. It will breed the type of people that we need for a human race to survive.
Which, another point, I think we were talking about this earlier. I don't think that should ever happen again. Government versus government.
Yeah,
and
so you
space
brought up an
exploration.
interesting fact.
Now it's all privatized companies. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, they're the ones who are going to take us
Yeah,
there.
so
Mars is the next moon type of race.
Yeah.
And I don't think you could say it's started yet, but if you are following these companies and what they're doing, it could be argued that we are on the cusp of something similar.
Which is
close to-
great. Give him more funding. Give him more resources.
He's
Like, at
not,
least-
that's the thing. He's not getting funding.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He's all privatized. He's creating smaller rockets that are going to have smaller solutions and eventually make money in order to eventually fund himself.
And NASA's still working, but I think they're getting underfunded as well, if I'm not mistaken. Now,
Yeah.
Trump did say he wants to do a space force, which I agree with Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's not the craziest idea. Like we do,
Makes
like
sense.
asteroids can come to Earth. We never know what's flying out in space. We never know what's going to happen out in space. We have so much debris in space, so many satellites in space for our little shits to work. That like, what if something were to fall? What if something were to happen? Just like how in the Air Force we have people to maintain certain things or do certain things, and in the ground level we have Army, Sea. We even have a sea level Navy. I think it just makes sense. It makes sense to have a space force. To completely militarize it as to one country, I disagree with. I think it should be like a
Oh, you said like
humanities military kind of thing, because you can't. Earth is not a country. Earth is where we live.
yeah.
So you can't just be like America owns Earth, Russia owns Earth. I think it should be a humanitarian effort. That's my belief on it.
I see that. But I also see it as a way of just pushing the cusp of technological advancement.
Exactly. And if you don't fund these people, like NASA has a great little side program called Eagle's Work. And there's this scientist in there. He's basically trying to create. I saw a YouTube video on it. YouTube is everything. He's trying to he took a bunch of nerds, watched Star Trek, and they're trying to reverse engineering how to space warp and how to space travel those further distance. And the concept that they have is just crazy. How they're thinking about like the craft itself isn't moving, but they have like a design where there's two rings on the end of the craft. And one ring kind of bends the space, and the other ring pushes the gravity. So it's almost like you've minimized the distance. Now you're just hopping over,
Yeah.
which is a crazy idea to think about.
It's pretty cool.
But they're working on it. Like these people are smart enough to think of these ideas, and they build small models and small ways of how to bend that little time and space in these small modules. But it's just unfortunate that we haven't discovered the energy to do it on a bigger scale.
Well, so I agree that's all cool, but now we're talking about allocation of resources. So this is all amazing. If there were no problems on Earth, this would be amazing. And I'm actually not against this. I'm for funding NASA and funding these space programs. But my argument would be the government no longer has a place in doing this. This is now the property of private companies. NASA is big in the past, but I feel like NASA can eventually get swallowed up by companies, and eventually there might not be a need for NASA.
Which is unfortunate because even if it gets swallowed up by another company, if there's just one major country like the USA that were to just back this idea up and bring it to like NATO or the world nations or something like that, and just instead of fighting North Korea about resources of nuclear weapon, put those scientists to better use for other things. And just imagine...
Okay, you're sounding a little bit like those people.
Just imagine.
All right, just take the money and put it over here.
No, not like put it over here. I'm just like, you're allocating resources to do damage to the world when you can allocate it to do better for human race.
It sounds very... Like, I get what you're saying.
I feel like at a sub-level, like...
a little narrow-minded.
Okay, it sounds a little like rainbows and flowers. I get
exactly.
it. But it's the idea they should try to... Like, these are world leaders. Like, think better. You're responsible for millions of people.
I think that's a common misconception that, like, all right, if we just had a world leader that was, like, better at heart, then the world will be a better place.
I don't agree completely better. They have to be intelligent, obviously.
Intelligent, but also there are so many factors playing at that level that I don't understand, but I know there are factors playing at that level, which is why, I mean, if we had kings still, if there was a king of America, maybe we could do this and have a good king. But the thing is, the system, rightfully so, is convoluted with checks and balances, and you can't just decide something is good and fully commit your entire government. You have to battle within the government to do something. I mean, like that.
Like, you think about the 60s, they were fully committed to the space race, but they were fully committed to everything else as well.
Yeah.
They were fully committed to fighting the Russians on a ground level, on a sea level, whatever it took, whatever it was to protect America. So that didn't mean that they didn't have allocated resources to other fields of the country.
Mm-hmm.
But because they had it for something specific about space, look at the minds that they created. Look at the NASA. Like, okay, but they created a NASA program that took people into fucking space. You are thankful to have a cell phone right now because of NASA.
I understand, but the thing is, we don't need that anymore. We have companies...
Okay, so give me your phone. Don't live with your phone. Don't live with your internet. Don't live with anything you got. Don't use your DirecTV. Don't use your DVR.
So you're getting carried away.
Don't go to the... Don't watch your porn. Like,
well, I don't know about that. But, so what I'm saying is, we don't need the government to do this anymore. Yeah, NASA is going to stay around for a while because they will take on projects which are way long term that current companies are not going to be looking into. That makes sense. Funding research for things that may not provide profitable right now. But as far as immediate space exploration, which is in the same category as the moon exploration, now we have, let's say, Mars exploration, asteroids, where now it's profitable. Because now if we're able to get resources from the edges of space, not edges of space, I'm sorry, but there are plans to mine asteroids and stuff like that.
I get what you're
and
saying.
They are profitable. This is where the majority of, instead of the government funding this, we can just have companies fund this, investors fund this, and it'll go by so much quicker and so much more efficient. So
who's to say?
I mean, it's already happening.
How long has Elon Musk been on this task? Do you happen to know just like a range? Because it seems like it's getting close to a decade.
So I guess the point of that is SpaceX founding date?
I guess so. Because that would be his initiative when he founded that program.
Founding date?
May
6th, 2002.
2002.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in 2018.
But before that, what did we really accomplish? There wasn't anything towards the moon.
He made a speech in 1961. You took a fucking man 8 years later and landed him on the moon. That's because of the backup they had from government, the backup they had from their nation. You can't just... You were talking about a private company. It took him this long to even get any traction.
But what I'm saying is, after we went to the moon, the reason why we didn't go back was because...
Nobody knows.
Well, it doesn't make sense to go back. We accomplished it. It was a huge success. But would it be as successful to go again and repeat the same thing?
Well, no, because I think
So
the moon doesn't have resources.
It's diminishing returns. You went the first time, amazing. The
yeah,
second time,
but we learned. Well, what if we had gone and we learned? Oh my God, there's so many resources
but no,
here.
as a politician, as a politician, to suggest doing that, yeah, you'll get a lot of support for that. But you're not the first one to do it anymore, so it's not as big a political boost to do it.
Yeah, because our next mission is Mars.
Yeah, but in order to progress to get to like the difference between the moon and Mars, the difficulty level, I'm assuming is way different.
God.
But what the accomplishments like we've seen is rockets being able to go into space and come back down and land perfectly fine. Reusable rockets. Like it may not seem like we're making a lot of progress, but if you look at what some of these companies are doing, SpaceX and what's the fuck Jeff Bezos' company's name?
I have no idea. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna look it up.
Reusable rockets is a very neat idea, but I don't think practical. Like, because you look at a rocket launch, these things detach from it, they're just falling. Like, you gonna catch them? Like,
no, I mean, like, think about it. Like, how much resources are wasted by sending up? I mean, I'm not saying that I know anything, but just on the surface level, sending a rocket up and only being able to use it once. If you had a rocket you can use multiple times, I mean, I would assume you'd save a shit ton of money.
Yeah, but that's on like a level of physics and technology that we don't have an understanding of yet.
Exactly. But I do understand that a reusable rocket would probably save you more money than building a new rocket.
I'm glad you understand that, but we have to get there somehow. We have to explore these navigations, these technologies.
But you're saying that these companies, it's called Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' space program, whatever. All right.
Fuck Jeff Bezos. We only care about Elon Musk.
Yo, but he's had some accomplishments too. I don't know exactly. We'll do another video on Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, but
they're the new space race.
Yeah, and
for my understanding from what you've told me.
And there are other programs too of people trying to like how the internet affected the market when the internet first came. Space is going to be the next frontier.
Hey, now you sound like a Star Trek nerd.
No, I'm dead serious. Like once we figure out how to get reusable rockets up and to do whatever the fuck rich people do up there, like for either it could be for tourism, getting resources, planet, like whatever you need to do.
When you say whatever rich people do there, I'm just imagining like these shuttle parties of mass cocaine and alcohol and strippers. That's all I'm imagining.
If I was rich,
so that's what you're allocating your resources to. Let the rich be richer.
Yeah, and fund the real shit. Like, I mean, imagine like the first thing you would do there is come up with a rocket to take rich people up to space and have like wild orgies or whatever, and then use that money to fund a trip to Mars.
Like, yo, I'm rich. I want that trip.
Exactly.
A reusable, it's fun in theory, a reusable rocket, but if you're not gonna if the people who have these minds to actually come up with these new physics and new technologies, if you're not gonna give them the ability to do so, then you're never gonna get to that idea. You're never gonna be able to sell it to rich people for wild orgies because you're not gonna have that resource. You're not gonna have that reusable rocket.
Wait, I don't get what you just said. So say that one more time.
Basically, I'm saying the funding and the resources are needed for space because these brilliant minds are able to change our physics, are able to change our technology, but we're not giving them the opportunity to do so.
So I think that the difference comes is that you're saying the government should fund it or it won't happen. I say that investors will invest in these type of companies.
But why? As an investor, if I'm making all the money in the world on Earth, why do I want to put it in space?
Because these companies are taking smaller steps. So in order to go for
but you're basically just trying to find someone who believes in you, whereas a government backing you up is such a hard
No, because you're blind. Like a government can't just blindly fund something. Yeah, at that point, the government funding.
Well, I'm sorry. In 1960, did they have any idea or like any type of knowledge of what space even is? They had to figure that shit out step by step with loss by loss.
But why? Like we are at a point where we have, I don't know, 1,000. Okay, I don't even know how many fucking satellites. We have a lot of satellites up there. The government actually has contracts for companies like this to come up with solutions to fix problems in space. Like they have a need for this. So just by these space companies fixing those problems, they get funded and they do the long-term
So I
research
get it.
needed.
You're basically like scaring them into like you're gonna lose your satellite unless you do something about it.
No, I mean, we use the outer range. Satellites we use, like there are needs for companies to fulfill government contracts to do these things because the government's doing them. But if a private company can do it better, it's always better and more efficient to do it that way.
I don't see how they get traction without a back of like such a big, like Big Brother in quote on like. I don't see how you're telling me his SpaceX program was started in 2002. It's 2018 and he's built small rockets.
I mean, we could look at what the accomplishments are. I mean, before Elon Musk, in between the space race and when Elon Musk started it, we didn't really do much. I don't know what exactly we did, but I know we didn't do much.
There was like a big hiatus on like the whole space thing.
Exactly, because you were at a weird point where it just didn't make sense to do another one. It didn't. It makes sense to do it, but no one is going to propose it because it doesn't have the same amount of results you get for going for the first time. That's just my opinion. Yeah. So then
there are a lot of lives lost in these testing and things that they do as well. So it is besides like a money thing. Like I can get it as an emotional factor as well, but I think the accomplishment. Like I'm gonna go back to the quotation: "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." I think he had an interview, and the reason he thought that line was, "I'm literally on a platform." And I'm just about to step down from this platform. It means nothing. The step is like nothing. Everyone takes a step every day.
Yeah.
But the money, the people, the 400,000 people in minds that took for him to take that small step, like it's just beyond crazy to me that we would have never gotten there. We would have never gotten these brilliant minds. We would have never got these scientific advancements, the internet, nothing. If it wasn't backed by the government, if it wasn't a big thing, if it wasn't a big deal, if it wasn't advocated as the way it was.
But now we're seeing the money is starting to show up in space. Money is starting so companies will now take over. At the time, there was no financial obligation to go to space other than it being a huge project that would provide jobs and have a form of adversity, and it was good for the American people's morale. But now there's actual money up there. So now there's money up there, all we need to do is just let these corporations take care of it. But like certain things like deep space exploration, yeah, the government needs to fund that because I don't know if there's money like for deep space.
Exactly.
Get that. But then now there's like we have so many satellites up there. We have needs for rockets to go up, come back down, fix shit up there. Like, let the companies fight over the government contracts for it.
So your basic instinct is just let greed be greed. Like greed.
No,
will
let
run
the
it
market
all.
be the market.
Yeah, like greed will run it all, right?
Yeah, I mean, as far as any technological advancement, as soon as capitalism takes a hold of it, it gets to the most efficient point. If you told the government right now to come up with...
Okay, well, competition does brew success, so I get that. But...
And you can hire people from any country, as long as you're the top scientist.
Maybe that's a problem. Maybe we need another Cold War. That was a competition right there, and look where it led us in 8 years.
Yeah.
Let's start another Cold War. North Korea, where you at?
All right. I think we got to a point where... I mean, it's not like we disagree completely.
No, but
I just do not respect your opinion on that. So,
all right, for what it's worth, you guys should definitely check out the movie. Check out the speech. It completely changed my mind about space and what we should do with space. I do think it's a new frontier, just like the sea was. Just like back in the day, they didn't know Earth was around and they can find the Americas. Everything is a new frontier. Everything leads us to a new direction. We as humans progress because we choose to, and we need to. So take your time, go watch the movie, watch the interviews, take up your own opinion. But space is something I'm really interested in. I'm sure we'll talk more about space going forward. I get your idea, and it makes sense. But your idea is just like feeding into our worst human traits, which is greed.
I think that's one of our best traits. So I think that's a root cause of our disagreement.
I think so.
I see greed as one of the most powerful things we have, and should be embellished.
I see humanity as one of the most powerful things we have.
All right, but before we cut this off, Mr. White, where do you think, if we have any viewers, where do you think they could find us at?
So you guys can find us at tvjunkies.com. We will have like this speech and other things posted there if you are interested in finding out more. Go see First Man. It's a great movie. You can also find our social media on tvjunkies.com, our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Find us at TV Junkies. Tweet us at TV Junkies if you guys have any questions, you guys want to give us shout outs, whatever you like. You can find us on all social media platforms, tvjunkies.com. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you listening to us.
All right. Thanks, guys.